Let's talk about BEM. Why? Because first, I've been asked several times recently to develop an Auto-BEM feature, auto class naming features for OxyProps and Structeezy. And I will tell you why I don't think auto naming is a good idea. And also because I've seen a few questions in Facebook groups, in communities, asking about tips for class namings. And these questions demonstrate a misunderstanding on the BEM methodology principles. So when we are talking about something, the best way to make sure we know what we are talking about is to get back to the source. This is why I am on the BEM methodology documentation website. You will find the link in the video description. And this is, of course, the best source to discuss about BEM. So first, where does BEM come from? BEM was created by Yandex in a process started in 2005, so that's 19 years ago. And the first official BEM version was published in 2009, which is 15 years ago. So BEM is not at all something new. And that's important to understand because it was first created to solve problems that for some of them don't exist anymore because we have a lot of available tools to solve these problems. One day when you have time, I highly encourage you to read this chapter, Solved Problems, that describes what problems Yandex was facing and how they solved them with BEM. And another very interesting reading is the history that describes all the steps from the origin in 2005 to the birth of BEM in 2009. But today we will keep things simple. We will discuss about BEM entities, blocks, elements, modifiers. We will discuss about mix. We will see when to use modifiers and when to use mix. And we will also discuss about basic BEM principles like single responsibility principle. So let's start in our page builder and we will talk about the first BEM entity, which is the block. And in BEM, block is the root entity and it's something that can exist by itself. So let's create our first block and we will create something simple. We will create a link block. So I will use an anchor element and give it a class of link, and this will be a simple link. The href attribute will be simply a hashtag. Let's give it also a label of simple link and inject. And I get my element, which is a simple element, unstyled, and it was created with a class of link. In the BEM methodology, the block name is always lowercase and words are separated by single hyphens. And now that I have my class for my block, I can define the CSS for this class. Of course, I could use Bricks UI fields, but I will use the custom CSS because this is my personal preference, but I like to have all of my CSS visible at the same place, and using all the fields don't make things visible, everything at the same place. So I will use the root placeholder. The root placeholder replaces any selector we are currently working on. So in our case, it will be the link class. And let's say, for example, that my links, just so it's visible for you, will have a font size of 3 rems. They will have a color of deep pink and on hover. So let's use CSS nesting. We can use CSS nesting inside of our page builder. And to use CSS nesting, I will use a ampersand, colon, hover to use my pseudo class, and on hover, the color will be hot pink. Okay, and this should work. I hope this is visible on the video, but I have a deep pink link, and on hover, it's hot pink, which is slightly lighter. Okay, so I did create a very basic block. That's a link block, but that's the base principle. My link class defines the block. I can use it on any element. I used an anchor element, an HTML tag, but I could use it on another element. It would still be the same block. Okay, so that's a very basic link, but let's imagine that somewhere else on my website, sometimes in my design, I need specific links to be underlined. And this is where we will use a modifier. So let's get back to my code and I will add another class. This one will be a link. And if you look at the official BEM documentation, the official naming convention for a modifier would be to use a single underscore with the name of the modifier, underline, for example. This is the original, the official naming convention for modifiers, but a widely used one is to use the double hyphen, link hyphen hyphen underline. Okay, so today we will use the double hyphen. And if you wonder why the original naming convention is to use a single underscore, it's because when you are using double hyphens, this can create troubles at code validation in comments. You know that an HTML comment is defined with an opening lower than sign, an exclamation mark, and a double hyphen. So having a double hyphen somewhere else inside of a comment could create an issue. So that's why the original naming convention uses underscores. So there is no problem with comments. And if you read the official documentation site about naming convention, it's clearly stated that you can use any naming convention you want to use, as long as you can clearly differentiate between blocks, elements, and modifiers. Okay, so let's use the double hyphen underline. This one will be an underlined link, and let's add it to our page. Let's reduce my window. Okay, it's not yet underlined because we have created an element. It has the two class, link and link underlined. And by the way, this is one of the base rules of BEM. A modifier class cannot be used by itself. It's always used with the block or the element class. So if I had only this link underlined, defining everything for my underlined link, this would not be valid BEM. To be valid, I need the block class on my element and then the modifier class. Okay, now you can decide if you want to style your underline link, because we are in bricks in a page builder, inside of the class itself. But as I told you, I like to have everything at the same place. And especially when using BEM, I keep the CSS for my block and my blocks elements and my blocks modifiers at the same place, which is at the block level. So I will use my block class custom CSS. And by the way, I can add comments. This is the block. And below, I will have my modifiers. And I want to create my modifier class. In a CSS processor like Sass, we could nest the modifier class creation inside of the block class, like we did for Hover. But I'm not using Sass, I'm in bricks, and it's using the standard CSS specification. So nesting my Hover this way is valid, but trying to create something like underlined is not valid. So what I will do is to use again my root placeholder, because this will work. Bricks will replace this root placeholder by my selector, and I will use a double hyphen underlined, and let's say that my underlined link will have a text decoration of underline. And we can see that my link is underlined. Okay, so this kind of modifier is called a Boolean modifier. It's either underlined or not underlined. It simply has two states. It's on or off. But what happens when several values can be used? Well, according to BEM methodology, you will separate your modifier name and your modifier value with the same separator. In our case, it will be two hyphens. So let's create a new modifier and imagine we want to create several themes for our links. So I will still use root to refer to my block, double hyphen, the name of my modifier, that will be the theme, and double hyphen, the value of my modifier, which will be, this theme will be C. And when my theme is C, I want my color to be blue, and I want my text decoration style to be wavy. And now if I add a new link with this modifier, it will be my link double hyphen theme double hyphen C. It will be my C themed link, inject, and I get a specific link using both modifiers. And here we can see the interest of the single responsibility principle. Because I have two different modifiers, the first one, the link underlined, is responsible for toggling the underline on or off. The second one is responsible to defining specific styles for a theme. And I can decide to remove the underline modifier, and my link will still have a different theme, but will not be underlined. Okay, so we have seen what a modifier is. We have seen what a Boolean modifier is. We have seen what a key value pair modifier is. Key value is theme sea, theme mountain, etc. And probably you start understanding why I think that automatic naming of the class is not something desirable. Because if I have those three links in my structure, how would an algorithm decide that I want one to be a block, the other one to be a block with a modifier for my underline, and the third one to have three different classes, one that defines my block, and to split the styles into two specific modifiers? An algorithm cannot make this decision. This is you as a developer that can make this decision based on your design, of course, and based on the way you want to structure the components on your site. Okay, so now what we see on the screen is that we have three links, but there's no separation. They are all touching each other. So maybe you may think that we could go to our block element and define, for example, a margin inline of 1 rem. Okay, if I do this, this would work because now I have separation between my elements. But this, including a margin inside of my block CSS definition, is not valid BEM methodology. According to BEM, the element cannot influence its environment. So you cannot include declarations that influence the way the element interacts with the environment. So no margin, no position, for example, inside of the block definition. This will be the responsibility of the parent block. Okay, so that's also an important principle in BEM, because this is why the BEM methodology can guarantee that components are reusable in various places in your project. So if this is not the way to go, how should we go? So let's say, for example, that we want to create a simple navigation menu with 3 links inside of it. So I will add a wrapper, and I will move all of my links inside of it. Okay, and now my wrapper will be a block. So let's give it a class that will define our block, a new block. So our first block was the link. Now we have the menu block. And let's get rid of 2 of our links, but we will also add a li element, and I will move my link inside of the li. This way I have a structure with a list item, and inside of my list item, my link. This is a typical way you would build a site navigation. Okay, so I have my menu, which is a block, and then I have my list item, which is a menu item. And in the BEM methodology, my menu item is not a block by itself, because the menu item cannot exist outside of the menu. So this is the use case for the third type of BEM entity, which is the element. So this list item will be my menu, and the syntax for defining an element is to use a double underscore with the name of the element. So this will be my menu item. Okay, so let's give it a bit of styling, because by default it's styled as a list. So let's go to my block. Same thing, I will use the root placeholder, and I will give it a list style of none and a padding of 0. Okay, so now what happens if I duplicate my list item? I have another one on top of each other. That's not what I want. So let's style it as a nav. This will have a display of flex, and I want my menu item to be white space, no wrap. Okay, and now I can add a gap of to rem, for example, and I get separation between my links. But the containing block is responsible for creating the space between my links. This is an important concept because this is what will allow us to reuse the link block in many different places without having to modify it. The block itself doesn't change, but depending on the context, depending on the containing block, its positioning and its environment will be different. Okay, so with this in place, I can add several links, several items to my menu. And they behave as links because they are link blocks. So for example, how should I handle this if I want my links, when they are used inside of my menu block, to have a background? Should I create a new modifier for my link block, or is there another way? And the answer is, as often, it depends. If you want this background for your links to be available for your design anywhere you could use your link, anywhere on your pages, this will be a use case for a new link modifier. And we could have a modifier like link background gray, for example. But if this will happen only when the link is used inside of the menu block, well, this is the use case for a BEM mix. So what is a BEM mix? Let's get rid of two of our items and come back to our simple link. So I'm at the link element level, and this is the root of my block. But I can also decide that my element is a link block, but is also a menu, and I will create a new element. It's a menu __ link. So my element, my A tag, will be both a link block, but also a menu link element. And then I will go back to my menu block and define that my menu link will have a padding inline of 1.5 ch, a padding block of 0.5 ch, a background color of dark slate gray, and a border radius of 5 pixels, for example. And with a BEM mix, this will allow us to merge styles from a block with another block or another block element to create a new semantic element. And this is an important concept to avoid code duplication. Because in this case, if I'm not creating a mix and simply use the menu link class on this link, I will repeat styles from my link block, duplicate styles from my link block. And if later I want to change the base styling for all links on the site, I would have to change it for my link block, but also for my menu link. Okay, so now I can duplicate items and I have my menu link. And now let's say maybe that I want a specific style for the last link in my menu. Well, maybe I want it to be underline, and I will use my link block underline modifier, but I also want it to be specific when used inside of my menu. So this will be a menu link, _ for the modifier, highlighted, and I will define my menu link highlighted. You see that this is a Boolean modifier with a background color of deep pink and the color black. Okay, so my last link is both a block with a block modifier, a link block with a link block modifier, underline, and a menu link element with an element modifier, which is the menu link highlighted modifier. And with this, we have covered the basic concept of BEM. So when to create a block, when to create an element. You create a block as soon as your component, let's call it a component, will be reused somewhere else on your page. And you create an element if it cannot exist on its own, and it can only be part of the block, like our menu item that only exists inside of a menu. Then use modifiers when you need to change the behavior, the state, the aspect of your block, and keep the single responsibility principle in mind. Keep your modifiers simple and create multiple modifiers if you need to. With the BEM methodology, you can have as many modifiers as you want applied to an element. And then decide if you need to create a modifier or need to create a mix. If the modification can be applied anywhere the component, the block can be used, then create a modifier. If the modification applies only in a specific context, in a specific containing block, then create a mix. So in the end, if you use any kind of software to generate class names for you, make sure, assuming you want to use BEM methodology, that you understand well the principles and make sure that the suggested classes would help you structure your CSS in the way you want to. Because as you noticed with the very simple structure we created today, an automated class naming software would not have ended with two different blocks and several modifiers as we did to achieve the design we want in the end. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.